Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jack Holder, the editor for the Great Commandment anthology. I have already messed up. I've wanted to more properly say, ladies, gentlemen, people of all orientations and persuasions, welcome to another interview in the Great Commandment comics anthology. Today, I am super honored to be here with Bryn Ziegler. We are going to be talking about her piece, Please Stand Clear. And we are be talking about what it means to be a member of society, how it is to actually really follow unwritten commands, and to work with cats in the middle of a live stream. So this is going to be absolutely amazing. If you have any comments or questions, please post them in the comments below. We are going to try and answer as many as possible. Share them because Bryn is an amazing person and we absolutely want to get as many comments and explorations of this creator's life as possible. But first, let's talk about what Great Commandment is. Because a lot of times we get this question of who are you, what's going on, what's up with the beard, and seriously, what is the Great Commandment? So this is a comics anthology, the second that I've run, and this really delves into what commands mean. Now, commands invade and pervade every single aspect of our life. We have the high and illustrious, from we the people in order to form a more perfect union, to you must love your neighbor as yourself. We also have the more common everyday commands that are more easily felt and understood. Clean up the room, the in-laws are on the way. Make sure that you actually do the dishes. Get outside and exercise, to lowbrow but truly lovely and heartfelt. Live long and prosper, and be excellent to each other. These sorts of commands are extremely important to our lives, but just as important is our response, yeah, but what does it all mean? What does it mean to live long and prosper, to be excellent, to form a more perfect union? Well, in the Great Commandment comics anthology, you actually get some of these answers. You get samurai Akitas, defending their homes against ninja cats and giants. You have Taoist hippos sitting underneath a banana tree talking about the suffering that is life. We are extending all the way up to the very halls of Valhalla, all the way to the most commonplace of areas and commands, local train ride. And who better to talk about that train ride and the unspoken commands that are felt and the creator of the comic, Please Stand Clear. I am honored that Bryn Ziegler is here to talk about this comic and the credits that they have created. Bryn, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Please Stand Clear?
Of course. So I'm Bryn. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I've been in Los Angeles for about 6 years. I came out here because my sister was out here to go to college at the University of Southern California. This is my second comic anthology that I have been published in. The first one is The Sea is Calling, a zine anthology, which I did a short comic about shaving my head, which, as you can see, I am still doing. I really love comics because I like the idea of one person, me, hopefully, being able to bring a whole visual story to life. So that's why I'm in this field. I like kind of pulling all the strings and getting to visually create this way. I have a background in libraries. I just finished a 2-year position with the USA Libraries. That was great for a couple of reasons. First and most important being that my partner is studying to be a librarian, which means that now when she talks about like new cataloging trends, I can understand her and really talk shop with her about that, and that's great. And the second is because I love doing research for comics. Although I didn't have to do all that much research for Please Stand Clear, because I take the train every day, twice a day, or I did before quarantine, of course. So I didn't have to do a whole lot of research to learn what it's like to be on the train. But I chose to do that because it's such a big part of my life, and I thought it was a really fascinating kind of microcosm to look into.
Fascinating. So let's dive right into what it means with Please Stand Clear. This is a comic that is a part of our preview Dropbox. I am going to post the link right now, which everyone can see here below. We have 6 comics from the Great Commandment Comics Anthology that you can totally check out for free by clicking that. And one of those comics is Please Stand Clear. And demystifying this, the selection of which comics were there were mine. And I really wanted to be able to showcase Bryn's work as part of that because it delved into different sorts of commands. The first anthology that I did, Why Faith, was into what we have faith in, what we believe in, and commands follow that progression into you have beliefs in something. What does that mean, and what do you do because of that? And what Bryn was able to do with Please Stand Clear is talk about the unspoken commands, the ones that you feel a lot more than are written down somewhere. And you did so talking about really commonplace, especially if you live in one of the more metropolitan areas. I live just outside Boston, and I worked in Harvard Square for more years than I can properly name. So taking line, I knew what Please Stand Clear was talking about. It was like, yes, this happens every day, every hour, everything that you talked about. So can you talk about what Please Stand Clear really, the overarching elements are for that?
Yeah. So I grew up in a place where there really wasn't a lot of public transit. So trains and buses have always been really exciting to me, especially when I finally moved to a place where I could use them and understand them. It took me a little while. The LA public transit system is quite confusing, but my partner grew up here and she helped a lot. But I really felt like kind of like a citizen of public transit after a while. Like you feel like you're part of this community that has this shared experience every day. And you kind of want to look out for one another. And I started thinking a lot about how the commands that you hear all the time, and sometimes they can be part of an environment that's really important to you or comforting to you. Like I love the train system. I feel comfortable with it because it feels like something that I've not conquered, that's not the right word, but like that I have earned my right to be a part of. But you can love something and still see the flaws and still think about it critically. So I was thinking about that in relation to the commands that you hear on the train. And like the kind of grand idea of that versus the practicality of the everyday reality of people on the train, and how that applies to kind of bigger systems of thinking and bigger aspects of society. So there's like a really good example, an easy example is that you're not supposed to eat food on the train. They say that very clearly. They're like, please do not eat or drink in trains or on platforms. And you get that like every 10 minutes. But you know what, is it a great idea to eat a lot of food on the train? Generally, no. You know, I would be really happy if I never had to get on a train and have a sticky floor again. And I understand why they tell you not to. But the reality is that everyone on the train is a person with their own reason for needing a granola bar after work, and that as a community, the kinder thing is to let that happen. even though it's technically against the rules. And that sort of small idea that you see really clearly in this comic, I think can apply to the greater concept of looking at the rules and laws that we live with. And while you can say that they're often trying to do the right thing, you have to understand the kind of the flexibility and the like applying a critical lens to them to see whether that's really the way that you want to live in a society. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, because what you seem to touch on was a microcosm of what it's like working in society as a whole. There are, what you're talking about on a train ride, you see walking or driving down the street all the time. You see people doing things that technically you're not supposed to be doing. Like many of the sort of things that you were talking about on a train ride, say that apple picking in an orchard, sorry, New England, and very much it being fall season, I keep rereading this and I'm like, all of these rules that you're talking about apply to orchards. Please don't just crowd everyone. Can you please not yell, especially gross invectives to anyone and everyone? Please don't eat all the apples just right there in front of everyone. But everyone has one or two apples while they're in the midst of the orchard. What you seem to really be touching on is, okay, there are certain rules that are loosey-goosey that you need to just like on a case-by-case basis. Towards the very end, you also talk about their rules that you just have to follow. And sometimes, no matter how uncomfortable it gets, it's time to actually stand up and say, hi, you're getting off right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, especially with what's been going on, like the creative process for the Great Commandment anthology took place pretty much between December of last year till July. So things kind of started changing in massive ways going through this entire creative process. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely.
And this being your second anthology, what was it like doing this with COVID going on, like the pandemic? I know as editor, it really changed from Why Faith to the Great Commandment, and it wasn't just because it was the second book.
That's actually kind of a funny question to answer. I mean, there were a lot of stressful things about suddenly working from home and being in quarantine, especially in a big city, and especially because my parents were actually supposed to visit the week that quarantine started, and now I haven't seen them in almost a year. But the funny part is that when I first wrote the script for this comic, I didn't put down the exact wording of the Metro announcements because I didn't think I needed to, because I had them memorized. So I figured I'll pick the exact ones that I'll use later. I mean, my girlfriend and I wrote them back and forth to each other on the train in the morning to see who could get like the inflection better. So I was like, I know them. I don't need to write it down. But then COVID happened, and I was lettering this comic at least 3 months after I'd last ridden the train, and I couldn't remember the announcements. So I had to look up, people make these videos and put them on YouTube that are like these kind of calming, meditative videos where they're like a whole train journey. So they'll sit on one of the trains. I've used the Gold Line because that's the one that I ride every day, and that's, in my opinion, has the prettiest route. But people will sit there and take a video out the window for the entire train ride and upload it to YouTube. And I had to find these videos and watch them and wait for the exact announcement that I was looking for to come up so I could get the wording right. And I just thought that was so funny as somebody who wrote this comic because I'm on the train so often and I couldn't remember what it actually sounded like. Also, when I was drawing everyone on the train, I had to draw them without masks on because that's not what this comic was about. And internally, I was like, what are you doing? That's not safe. You all shouldn't be touching that same like hand strap. No.
I have seen actual like stories from prose books as well, where people are trying to write contemporary books, and if you've never written a full prose novel, you pretty much write 20 in 2019 or 2018 or even 2016, and so you're trying to figure out what the world is like. So I'm seeing these reviews of books on Amazon in 2020, and they're like, "This doesn't even mention the pandemic once. What's going on here? This is in the modern day. This was released just last week." I'm like, no one could possibly have talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone going backwards into the past, like anyone that talks about 2020 from now on and doesn't mention like the political decision of wearing a mask is like just ignoring major portions of American history. So it's fascinating to actually be able to do that. My own story in The Great Commandment references modern ideas, but it's set in a fantasy setting, so I very much get to do whatever I want.
The nice thing about world building is if you pick your own world, then nobody can tell you that it's not historically accurate.
Exactly. But then if you keep going with that world, you have to make your own rules, because you will find fans who are like, this is not what you said magic was like all the time. Like, you've just changed everything. I'm like, I did? Uh-oh. But I want to talk about bringing comics that talk about the modern day. Before we jumped on, we all talked about our shared love of history comics and everything else. You really seem to want to dive into both contemporary and history, but you're not really looking for fantasy or sci-fi, Bryn. You want to dive into the realistic.
Actually, most of what I do is fantasy or sci-fi. It's just that I really enjoy autobiographical comics as well, and I enjoy comics that involve a lot of research. So I love researching like folklore and different settings to kind of incorporate into fantasy, because I feel like that's what makes it feel like a real place, is if you have a lot to go off of. But most of what I do is fantasy. I just really I love reading historical comics, and I love I love doing autobiographical comic writing, like many comic artists, because sometimes you have kind of experiences that you want to share, and you can only do that through kind of bringing people to that in a way that I feel like comics is a great medium for. I recently did a comic about feeling like we were on a spaceship, because my partner and I live in this relatively small apartment. It's much bigger than our last one, but it's a one-bedroom apartment. And recently we were right near a wildfire, because we're in Pasadena, so there was a wildfire nearby. And for a few days, we really couldn't go outside. We couldn't open the windows. The light was all orange, and we had like an air conditioner running and a humidifier running and an air purifier running, just to try to kind of keep everything equalized in here. And I felt like just, tweeting like, feels like we're on a spaceship, really wasn't going to get that point across and get that kind of feeling of being cooped up and being like a little island of safety. So I made a comic of it, and that's why I really enjoy autobiographical comics, because they're like an emotional release to be able to put that out there.
Right. And for it seemed like a solid month living on the East Coast, and then you would see people posting pictures of, this is outside. I'm like, no, that's Mars. I'm like, what? Uh-oh. This is not exactly how we thought we would experience the Mars rover project. Your black comedy brought to you from Boston. So a question that I want to ask you, you've worked in libraries and you love history, comics, and research, because especially as a writer, you're trying to write fantasy and sci-fi, you're trying to figure out how much is enough research, how much do you need to delve into things? Do you need to figure out, okay, this is a medieval fantasy which is extending from 1276 to 1295, so this is a sort of hair style that's going to be worn. This is the exact type of that the lower middle class will be having. How much is enough research?
I think the problem is there's never enough research. And so at a certain point, you have to kind of cut it off and say, I'm basing it on this, but you can't, I can't let myself get so far into it that every single detail has to be correct, or else I'll never actually start the writing or the artwork. But having access to the kind of resources that I did as a library staff member, I'm not technically a librarian, but I worked with a lot of them, was really great, because you can get like 12 books in an hour on any special interest you have. And I really liked being able to kind of get a lot of different perspectives. Part of what I like about the research is making sure that it's a little bit less about the historical accuracy for me, and a little bit more about making sure that you're looking at it from all angles before you start trying to create based off of it. Like, if you're writing about a musician, knowing really from a musician's perspective what XYZ feels like and what the music would be like to play, and then also knowing what the instrument looks like, because I have been an artist for a long time and I still can't draw a violin. But one of my special interests is Judith paintings, like Artemisia Gentileschi's Judith, slaying Holofernes, and Caravaggio's Judith, which is not as good in my opinion as the Artemisia one, but I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me on that. And I really want to do a project involving that somehow, but I'm still stuck in the research stage. So I have about 6 different books about Judith paintings scattered around my apartment right now. And I'll let you know when I figure out how much research is enough research. But as of right now, there's always more.
Oh yeah, I am currently like in the very early beginning stages of research, or I want to do a whole graphic novel series on the 30 Years' War in Europe, and because it feels like Game of Thrones, because it extends through all of Europe. It starts just in this small like region of Bohemia, and then it extends. You suddenly have Sweden taking on Switzerland. The Catholic Church is against the Habsburgs, who are technically the rulers of the Holy Roman Empire. Spain is constantly involved in civil war, and I'm looking at this going, I really want to talk about this. This seems amazing, and there's so much research. And then this week I'm talking with Jody Lynn Nye, and she's like, oh yeah, that's a 1632 project that's got all these fantasy books that are going on right now. There's like 8 of them. I'm like, how much going on? So especially because we get to talk about fantasy, we can also talk about The Witcher and what kind of historical fantasy, if you had the opportunity, would you really like more? Because we've so much English, French, and Germanic, like that has been the last almost 2 years of fantasy. I personally would like a little bit more Welsh because the Mabinogion is not explored enough. But what about you personally? Where would you like to go for historical fantasies?
Well, this is not geographical, but I would like to see more queer historical fantasy, which I think is something that we're starting to get a little bit more of. But I would just love to see more in whatever fantasy genre, in whatever place, a more exploration of the idea that, like, yes, queer people existed way back then, and they should get to have their cool fantasy worlds too.
Yes. I completely agree there, and very much so. Like, there are stories extended throughout the American Revolution of amazing generals that had closed optional gentlemen only parties that were just completely ignored by high society because this general also happened to be one of the greatest trainers of men, period. And then there's the Mulan story, which I still want to be told because her story of challenging her father to a duel and taking Aiden as a wife before revealing herself to the army. As much as I semi-enjoyed the new Mulan movie.
I haven't seen the new Mulan movie, I have to admit.
You have not?
No, I've heard a lot of interesting things about it, but I don't have a Disney Plus account. So
yeah, we got the Disney Plus account just to see Mulan, and there are some really great things about it. And there's also like, oh, you're giving Mulan the Force.
I heard some interesting things about it from there's a Chinese historian who created a whole video about the kind of interpretation of the kind of superhero power story that they went with. But I haven't seen it myself. I will say the original, the animated Mulan for all of its flaws was very important to me as a young woman. Partly because I also wanted to cut off all of my hair, so.
I adored it because you actually had a male lead in Chang who turned out to be just very devoted, trying to figure out what he can possibly do to help his girlfriend instead of trying to figure out how he can make her his wife. Like, what can I do to make her happy instead of, okay, how am I going to make her my property? Like, the fumbling nature in Mulan between those two, the relationship was some of the most real and heartwarming I have seen in a Disney relationship.
I think that my favorite scene has always been the throwing the arrow down at his feet.
Yes. Oh, so, every aspect of that movie, like, music is referenced throughout the month, and there is sort of a Chen figure, not romantic at all. There is like barely any romantic relationships in that, but Jet Li's Emperor, which is pretty freaking cool. So we have now reached what I call the GC portion of the interview, because this is also very much talk about this amazing book that you guys can get. Once again, we are trying to raise $5,000. We are currently sitting at 3,062 from 73 backers. If you like what Bryn and I have been talking about and want to get this book, you can. If you want the deluxe version with added art and content, you absolutely can. If you want to get the Why Faith book, the first one that I was a part of, you absolutely can. And as we've been going through, we've been unlocking new milestone rewards, like you can get Russell Nalty's Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter issue 1, MJ Massey's issue 1 of Blackball, and I think Bryn's got that is going to be unlocked before too long. You want to say a little bit about that?
Sure.
People watching.
So I added as an extra bonus my first Metro sketch zine. So all of this time that I have spent on the train, I usually spend it drawing, which is a habit of mine for many years. So I have this whole collection of what I call Metro sketches, but drawings of people from the train. And I collected them into a zine called Gold Line. And that's going to be an extra reward for backers.
And you that you will be getting that for free. Like we reach the funding, I promise you, you will get Bryn's work if you are a backer as a free download. And the only reason we're able to do this is because Bryn is an awesome human being. I was asking the creators, going, do we want to get more works out there? Do we want to actually be able to just showcase more of the creators here? Because I love anthologies. The collaborative process is mind-bogglingly cool. We have over 50 people involved in anthology, which generals the mind, but it also means that you get to, if you are a fan of work, or you're discovering a Bryn for the very first time, and you're like, this person is awesome, I need to see more, you can. So please, once again, the Kickstarter link is in the comments. Not comments. Go to the preview. We do have the link in there. So, Bryn, this comic is anthology is all about personal interpretation. It is all about you as an audience member or a comic creator taking external forces, interpreting them, and applying them to your own life. We are going to break that right now because we have you, the creator of Please Stand Clear, here, and actually ask you, what do you want people to take from Please Stand Clear, or from the Great Commandment, or from this wonderfully monstrous dumpster of rainbows that is the year 2020?
I think that I touched on this a little bit earlier when we were talking about kind of what inspired me to write this comic. But I want people to take away from it that you can always look critically at what you're being asked to do, at the rules, and think about them with, compassion, and you can love something and see the good in it and still wish for it to improve and be better. I think that applies to a lot of aspects of our lives. And that I hope that you take from this year to care for the people close to you, and to wear a mask and vote.
Please get your flu shot. Please get your shot. The nerd in me was really excited. You probably did. I don't know if you're a fan of epic rap battles of history, Bryn.
No, I don't. Oh, yes, I've seen a couple of them. I've seen a couple.
They just dropped today, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, like 2-3 hours ago. So I am super excited sometimes just being able to see the artwork that people are able to create during this year. It helped me personally a lot as editor for this anthology, because once June and July really started rolling around, creators like you were like, is this good? Is this what you were thinking? And I'm like, no, it's better. Please. This was so amazing to be a part of. Bryn, do you have any questions or things that you would really like to talk about right now as well?
I don't think I have any specific questions. I just want to say that I really enjoyed being a part of this anthology from start to finish. I'm really proud of the piece that I have in it. I do have an illustration in the deluxe version, so I hope that people enjoy that. And, you know, when it's safe, I hope that people will take public transit and think about this.
Yes. Hopefully one day we can all take the train to something like San Diego Comic-Con and actually be able to meet up together. This was supposed to be the year where I was going to go with friends to that convention, bring a ton of copies of the anthologies, and we would be doing a massive signing party. That didn't happen because health. But it's one of the things that we're looking forward to, as long as we practice proper social distancing, proper actual listening to health experts. Don't believe everything that you read on the internet, but do trust your doctors and the medical professionals. Please do so. This pandemic this year can be beaten if we work together and follow the unwritten rules that Bryn is talking about.
There's a new unwritten rule on the train which says everybody takes a seat on the other side from everybody else.
Yes. Please, no crowding. Please. No crowding back. I do not want another super spreader event. This has been absolutely wonderful. Join me tomorrow when I will be with artist, animator, and creator Lilia Woods. Today we talked with Bryn about the unspoken commands of the train ride. With Lilia, she answers a very fundamental question to life: why did chicken cross the road? This is a wonderful time to end. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, and you have more questions for Bryn or myself, please post them below. We are going to try and answer them at a later date. Please stay safe. Go to Kickstarter, get the book, get the deluxe version, get 30 copies and give them to all your family members. And have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Many blessings to you. And thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.